Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start today's video with a story that perfectly illustrates the surprising encounters one might have even in the seemingly mundane task of parking at a grocery store. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Middle-aged Karen parks in the mother parking spot and confronted me about how I'm not entitled to it. Hey there, this happened yesterday at my local Loblaws. Most grocery stores here in Canada have a few expectant mother parking spaces that are intended for pregnant women or parents with babies to use. They're generally closer to the door, usually beside the handicap spaces or cart corral. I'm currently 7 months pregnant, was following a Lexus into the parking lot, and I planned to use one of these spaces. The Lexus ahead of me took this space. I didn't think much of it and parked about 4 to 5 spaces down from it. As I'm walking into the store, the woman in the Lexus, mid-60s, saw that I was very visibly pregnant and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize," and laughed at me. I'm hormonal and it probably wasn't necessary, but I responded with, "You're obviously not that sorry since you parked in a spot you shouldn't have." She proceeded to get about a foot from me and scream at me, "F you, you're not entitled to this spot." I was caught off guard and started crying. Not proud of this, but the hormones are intense sometimes. Thankfully, bystanders don't like it when people yell and physically intimidate a pregnant lady, and about 5 people came over to rip her a new one, telling her she's way out of line and I'm the only person they see who's entitled to the space. One gentleman, my hero, actually called her a Karen. She got back into her car and left. I just don't understand why she felt the need to confront me. Did she think apologizing for her intentionally crappy behavior would make her look less like a Karen? Like I wasn't going to say anything, I just assumed she needed it because she had a baby or whatever? But she didn't. People don't apologize when they're obviously in the wrong anymore. They double down and make it somehow your fault. People have no accountability anymore at all. And our second story. Went to senior center to deliver pizza, left with a new mom. I'm a pizza delivery guy and was winding down for a much-needed early close on Mother's Day Sunday. I'm one of the people on staff who didn't have family plans that day. My family situation is what you call complicated, so worked all morning while short-staffed and was pretty beat. It was especially emotionally hammering to deliver so many pizzas to happy families visiting or hosting their moms. I was ready to go home and get drunk and forget about the whole stupid holiday. So I get a late call just a few minutes before we closed and decided to take it because money's money and it was a pretty big order, 6 pies. So I loaded up and realized that about 3/4 of the way to the destination that the address was for the local senior center. They used to order all the time, tip really well, and make really sweet conversation before the pandemic, so I was psyched to see they were safe and steady enough to order pizzas again. I snuck them a side of breadsticks from a D-bag who never tips and always harasses our female drivers that I was dropping off along the way. By the time he'd call to complain, we'd be closed. Suck on that, but not your breadsticks. Anyway, I digress. I got there and was glad to finish off what had been an overall really crappy day with a pleasant trip to the senior center and carried the food to the front desk. The receptionist offered to carry the pizzas back, but she looked frail enough to be a senior center resident herself, so I said I was happy to get them where they were going. She COVID checked me and gave me a new mask. Not sure what was wrong with mine, but whatever. And I found my way to some event room where they'd ordered the pizzas. And it was a total gut punch. Literally just a room full of sons and daughters visiting their mothers and having some kind of festive party. My good mood went away real quick and I dropped the pizzas on the table and shuffled out. But I realized that while they'd prepaid for the pizzas over the phone with a credit card, they hadn't tipped. So no matter how bitter I was, I had to make in-person contact with whoever had ordered the pizzas, or I basically just wasted half an hour. I went around the room asking for Margaret, the name on the order, and eventually someone put me in front of her. Our shop doesn't have a uniform or anything, so I started to explain, "Hi, Margaret, right? You ordered?" And she was really frazzled, I guess, running the event, so she cut me off and was like, "Oh, good, you're here. We were starting to wonder. I don't think Bonnie has been matched with anyone yet. Wait right here." I tried to cut in and explain I just delivered the pizzas and she'd mistaken me for someone else, but it went right over her head. She pushed an old woman over in a wheelchair and said, practically shouting, "Bonnie, this young man is here just for you." Before I could try my explanation again, Bonnie replied, "He is he? Well, full disclosure, son, don't get too attached, 'cause Jesus has my heart." Margaret, the one who'd ordered the pizza, or at least the name we had on it, whispered to me, "She's a real live wire, have fun." And then Margaret and my tip were in the wind. Bonnie looked up at me and goes, "You like bridge? I hope you brought your checkbook," and started wheeling away to a table. I followed her, thinking I better not lose track of her until I could return her to Margaret. I spotted a woman with an ID badge who looked like she knew what was doing and explained that I was the pizza delivery guy, but somehow had left me with this old woman in my charge. I guess my explanation wasn't clear enough because I said something like, "Hey, I was actually delivering some pizzas up here." And the girl says, "You brought pizza? Oh, that's so nice. I'll make sure you're compensated." So at first I thought, great, all resolved now. But no, she gave me a wad of cash and this organizer disappeared, leaving me with Bonnie and her deck of cards. I kept looking for Margaret to return this lady to, but also did kind of enjoy making conversation with her, and knew no other deliveries would be coming in since we'd closed on my drive over. I actually did like listening to Bonnie talk about the YouTube conspiracy she wholeheartedly believed and the spat she was having with the arts and crafts chaperone and so on. She even gave me a recipe. But I was worried that she had dementia and thought I was a family member or that she was expecting a particular visitor and at any moment a guy would storm in and say, "What are you doing with my aunt?" or something. So finally I saw the second organizer again, the one who'd given me the cash. I figured Margaret may never return, so I shouldn't wait for her, and I pulled the organizer aside and said, "Look, there's been a mix-up. I don't really know this woman." The organizer seemed distracted. She was doing several things at once, and she very casually said, "Oh, there's no mix-up. The pairings were totally random. You weren't expected to have much in common. You'll get to know her. Don't overthink it," and receded back into the crowd while I was still saying, "No, I'm just delivering pizza." At that point, I seriously considered leaving because it wasn't my fault that these people were unorganized, but Bonnie was waiting for me with this huge grin on her face to play more cards, and it didn't look like there were any real relatives coming for her, so I figured I'd stick it out for a few more games. I was eventually able to pick up in context from eavesdropping on other pairs that this was not a mother-child extravaganza. It was a volunteer event for women living at a senior home without kids or whose kids couldn't visit them. That was a huge relief because I would have felt really terrible if she was a dementia patient who thought her son had come, especially because I was kind of enjoying being mothered by her, for lack of a better term. It felt really good to have someone asking what I was doing at work and saying they were proud of me for things that weren't actually a big deal. She proudly bragged to everyone we passed on our courtyard walk about this silly little Employee of the Week award I just won. She proudly bragged to everyone we passed on our courtyard walk about this silly little Employee of the Week award I just won. Basically title only. You get your photo on the wall, but everyone gets it at some point, and usually more than once. But she made it feel really important. And I really secretly loved how she got outraged over minor transgressions on my behalf. Like I told her how my landlord is sticking it to me on repairs, and she was like, "He's quite the ripe hair in the tuna," with such sincere gusto. She said she knew a guy who could tune him up for me, and I don't think she was talking about repairs, but I didn't follow up. Every time I tried to extricate myself, she'd have another activity she wanted to do. Once we finished cards, she wanted to do arts and crafts. Once we did that, she wanted me to push her around the courtyard. Once we did that, she was famished from the walk, even though all she did was sit in her wheelchair and wanted pizza. And I'd fed her 2 slices before an orderly appeared and angrily informed me she was not supposed to eat pizza. I don't know how she ended up with the 3rd slice, but I seriously did not give it to her. Finally, the party was winding down, and she wanted me to hang out and watch a game show with her. About 30 seconds into the show, she was asleep. I left her a coupon, even though I guess she isn't supposed to eat pizza, and headed home. It was kind of nice to spend Mother's Day doing Mother's Day type stuff. Really nice, actually. At this point in my life and career, if you want to call it that, I have no wholly good memories that involve pizza, but this was pretty close. And our last story. Your pool is banned. I bought an excellent house and made sure in advance that it was not part of any HOA floating in yellow, stinky liquid. My house was a bit away from the others, and it was perfect, surrounded by a green lawn and a couple of old oaks. It was my personal sanctuary. The main highlight of the property was the pool. I was not part of the HOA, which added to my peace of mind. Here, I could do anything I wanted, anytime, without looking back at someone's rules and regulations. But I wouldn't be telling you this story if everything was so good. Everything changed when the HOA representatives suddenly decided that my pool was now their business. At first, they came with polite requests, and then they became downright demanding. We just want everything to be by the rules. Your pool is a risk to all of us, they claimed during one visit, as if they had the right to decide what I do on my own property. Rules? On my land? I objected, but they wouldn't listen. When I refused to comply, the real terror began. Every day they found a reason to nitpick, even calling the police for the most ridiculous reasons. Your music's too loud. It's unacceptable, they yelled, even though I listened to the radio at almost a whisper. The police would come, sigh, and leave, understanding the absurdity of the situation, but the HOA representatives were relentless. One day, Karen approached me as I was raking leaves on my lawn and threw a large rat at me, shouting, "The pool is banned." But since she was an old lady, the rat didn't reach me, fell on the lawn, and ran toward the HOA houses. Great job, Karen. This was my Rubicon. I decided this could not continue. I started by installing surveillance cameras around the property to record every visit and every call to the police. Then I consulted a lawyer to help me file complaints against the HOA's actions. When everything was ready, I presented the evidence to the head of the HOA. The video recordings of their behavior, their screams, and baseless police calls made a strong impression. He said, "Wow, you probably deserved all this when you decided that the pool doesn't pose a danger to my children who could drown in it at any moment. Hey, mister, maybe don't let your kids onto someone else's fenced property." So I realized this wouldn't end peacefully. The next 2 times the police came to me, I showed them the video evidence that the call was fictitious and unfounded. Karen was fined $2,000 for the false police call and was warned that it could lead to criminal charges if it happened again. It turned out she'd been calling the police all these times. The police visit stopped. But then someone started dumping trash in my yard at night. Karen didn't realize I had installed cameras, so for 2 weeks I collected video recordings of Karen clumsily throwing various trash over, pretending I didn't know who was doing it. Karen even came over a few times with a puzzled look asking, "Who did this?" You're gonna love it when you find out, I thought then. Because Karen didn't know that in the state of Ohio, as in many other U.S. states, dumping trash on private property without the owner's permission can be considered an act of vandalism or illegal dumping. The exact legal consequences depend on the amount of trash, the frequency of such actions, and the harm done to the property or the environment. So I hired expensive cleaners each time and collected receipts for the payment. I could have done this for more than a couple of days, but I think the court would suspect I had a problem with my head, so I took all the recordings and went to the police. Karen was fined and sentenced to community service for 3 months, and she was forced to reimburse me for the cleaning crew's fee for all my receipts. After that, the HOA's enthusiasm somewhat diminished, and they stopped harassing me. Karen rat thrower, that's something new. If things keep going like this, Karen will soon be able to start her own league and end her career as a crazy HOA lady. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.